At 210 North Pence Street, in the heart of the city's historic centre, you'll find one of the most well-known chili places in the city. The brick building, which is 2 stories tall, is the location of the Dalton Little Theatre, which is Georgia's oldest community theatre that is still actively playing. Since its founding in 1869, the Dalton Little Theatre, often known as DLT, has kept the community entertained with live performances, with the exception of World War I and World War II. It has been said by a significant number of the players, directors, and spectators that frequent DLT that the theatre is somewhat supernatural. I have heard walking overhead, when no one was upstairs, Randall Ovby, a local actor who had his first performance with DLT in 1977, recounted. This was before the company claimed the present space as their home. There was a time when I was in a cast shot for the film Curious Savage, and there was a picture of a ghost crossing behind us. I assume it was for that film. In addition, I had been there when the sound system would make its debut in a sound booth that was completely empty. It was said by William Brooks, another seasoned local thespian, that he too has heard footsteps that do not belong to him, adding, "Many of us have," he said. In addition, I've had individuals remark that they can smell smoke from a pipe or cigar, yet nobody smokes within the building. Carl Johnson, a firefighter who passed away, is the subject of local legend. At one point in time, the structure that is now over a century old was used as a fire hall. The phrase, "the old firehouse," is still often used to refer to it these days. Randall made the following information available. I heard that Carl was a fireman who came back from a run and had a heart attack, dying on location. According to the legend, a party of firefighters were sent to the scene in the 1950s. They went back to the firehouse after putting out a fire that had been going on. All of the individuals, with the exception of Carl, walked upstairs to take a shower and change their clothing. Carl's health was not in good shape. He fell asleep while reclining on a chair on the first level of the building. After some time had passed, a few of the firefighters made an effort to rouse Carl, only to find out that he had already passed away. He was no longer fighting. Almost immediately after Carl was put to rest, a number of firefighters started asserting that he was still present. Many people caught a glimpse of Carl out of the corner of their eye. Someone was able to spot him perfectly. His knockings and footsteps have been heard by an uncountable number of people during the course of his life. It is well knowledge that Carl is capable of manipulating electrical devices and moving stuff around. It is common practice to place the blame on Carl if props or personal goods are misplaced at DLT, even if there are some people in DLT who are adamant about not being left alone in particular parts. Randall Ovby is not bothered by the fact that he has to share his cherished theatre with a ghost. "I absolutely adore it," he said. "I believe that it is fantastic. I get the impression that he is there to protect since he is a firefighter." In the latter half of the 1960s, police from the Dalton Police Department were called to the Hotel Dalton after an incident. Housekeeping discovered the body of a young lady who had checked in the previous night. The body was discovered the next morning. She had taken her own life. The low-rise building that was originally known as the Hotel Dalton is now known as the Landmark Building. It is 5 stories tall. Randy Bates, an attorney, is the owner of the property, which is located at 101 East Crawford Street and accommodates office space. The building is inhabited by a number of people who will attest to the existence of supernatural occurrences. Currently working with Dalton Ghost Tours, Jesse Kraut, who is from Rocky Face, is a tour guide. One day, a lady who was walking down the path asked me who the ghost of the Landmark Building is. The fact that she works there and has heard people crying on the second level led her to believe that the building was haunted, as she explained to me. According to her, the atmosphere there is weighed down by melancholy. As one of the policemen who worked the suicide case at Hotel Dalton, Jesse's grandfather-in-law, Troy Hall, was one of the individuals involved. What Jesse said was, "It was a very long time ago." The unfortunate truth is that he cannot recall the name of the girl. He said that she was in her late teens or early 20s at the time. At the time, she was working as a car hop at the Cherokee Drive-In Theater, and she was experiencing a variety of emotions due to an unwelcome breakup in her love relationship. Due to the fact that newspapers do not often publish suicides, it has been difficult to get further information on her. During the conversation, Jesse said that one of the lawyers who works with Randy Bates has reported seeing strange occurrences on the upper level. And further attorney, whose office is located on the lower level of the building and on the rear side of the structure, has observed doors slamming for reasons that cannot be explained. There was a time when an electrician suddenly left the building and refused to come back because of something terrifying that had occurred to him. There are several instances of paranormal activity at the landmark building. A large number of tour participants have reported seeing lights turn on at night as they were standing in front of the landmark building and listening to her speech. During the conversation, Jesse said that it is not unusual for the lights on the second, third, and fifth levels to suddenly turn on. A glance around the empty parking lot substantiates the notion that it is empty inside, the speaker said. No one is working inside at that late hour. My impression is that the remaining soul feels lonely after all this time has passed. All she wants is for us to be aware that she is there. Together with his wife and 2 boys, Leon Hurst relocated to Dalton in the month of June in the year 1971. The town had a total of 4 cinemas at the time. 2 of them were drive-ins and the other 2 were walk-ins. Leon was hired by Martin Theatres to play the role of city manager for all 4 theatres. There was not a single member of the Hurst family that believed in ghosts or the supernatural when they first arrived in Dalton. However, as time went on, each member of the family started to encounter occurrences that occurred inside the walls of the old Wink Theatre that would permanently alter their worldview.
Have you ever felt that someone or something was staring at you the moment you stepped foot in a building, regardless of whether it was empty or not? Getting set to surprise you or maybe even blow some wind your way? Is there a specific place, like a dark church at night, an eerie attic, or a theater, that makes you feel this way? The Grand Opera House, also referred to as the Grand, opened its doors in 1884 and is now Mercer University's Performing Arts Center. But even before the turn of the century, the Grand had a haunted past. Back in 1971, the Grand's executive director was none other than Randall Widner. Restoring the Grand was an enormous effort, but Widner, who loved his job and the theater, gave his all to it. The Grand staff was shocked to discover Widner's body in the hotel's Thunder Room, after he had been missing from work for many days. The Georgia Sun is one of many outlets that have reported on his alleged ascent to the room and subsequent death while armed with a handgun, a bottle of whiskey, and sleeping pills. However, there's more to that story, and it's not the only specter supposedly lingering in the Grand's corridors. Bob Mavety, the senior technical director and an employee of the theater for the last 28 years, has amassed a wealth of information on the hauntings. Mavety said that stories began circulating in the 1950s about the opera's specter of a murdered vocalist lingering inside the structure. Notable stories about security guards and fire marshals in the sort of spotting or hearing an entity here. Most of the time it was one known as the Lady in White, according to him. This entity was primarily known at that time. A spectral figure, the Lady in White, has been said to have been seen on the theater's balcony, and her voice has been heard all across the Grand. Additionally, the balcony saw the specter of a deceased vocalist. She was often seen in the boxes or on one of the landings at the back of the building, according to him. One phantom of the Macon Opera House that sticks out, nevertheless, is Mr. Randall Whitner, who was already mentioned. After chatting with the late technical director's close buddy, Mavity has learned more details about the terrible tale. According to the narrative, he was the executive director, the technical director of the theater at the time when they were doing restorations of the theater in the late 1960s. Mavity knows more about this sad tale. After stopping the building's conversion into a parking lot next door, Mavity insisted that the renovations could finally begin. In an effort to bring the theater back to its former glory, Whitner was chosen to oversee its reconstruction. During the time that Whitner was here, he devoted a significant amount of his time and energy to working on the theater, and it was during this time that he became estranged from his wife, said Mavity. A woman who was close to Whitner reached out to Mavity to fill her in on further details about Randy's private life. Mavity pointed out because he was spending so much time here, she started to step out on him, and he became very distraught about that. And it took its toll on him because he was spending so much time here, but he was losing his wife in the process. Mavity described the scenario with these terms. Consequently, he decided that enough was enough one day. Armed with a pistol, sleeping pills, and a bottle of alcohol, he headed to the Thunder Chamber after a day-long session concluded and everyone had left. He had already taken a couple of sleeping pills, and by the time he got to the top, he was overwhelmed by the heat, sat down, and never recovered, says Mavity. A few of sleeping tablets had been taken by Whitner before to his climb to the peak of the mountain. Taking the pistol was his first step in taking his own life. The Grand has been a subtly, paranormally active location since Whitner's death. There have been reports of phantom hands tapping on employees' shoulders and phantom noises heard by theater employees. On the far left side of the auditorium, some have even seen a specter sitting on a chair. The tech crew is the target of most of Randall's poltergeist manifestations, which are mostly benign nuisances. Many things that have happened to Mavity during his life have given him reason to believe in the supernatural. He has supernatural beliefs and claims to see specters. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it is crucial to be respectful of the opera and not provoke any spirits.
Countrywide rail downturn peaked in mid-1894 when 25% of railroads were in receivership and $25 million of railroad capital was damaged. One of many depression victims, Georgia Midland and Gulf went bankrupt in 1894. Company receivership lasted until 1896. After being sold to G. Gunby Jordan, William H. Palmer, R. A. Lancaster, and George Sherman, it became the Georgia Midland Railroad under a state charter in March 1896. Southern Railway Co., founded in July 1895, bought the firm in July 1896. J.P. Morgan owned the Southern Railway Co., with branches throughout the South. Although the North controlled the South financially, Southerners ran the show. Southern Railway Company's first president was Columbus's Samuel Spencer. In his 12 years as president, the line grew in length and revenue. Spencer was a key player in the New South until he died in 1906. Spencer was among 7 murdered when 2 passenger trains collided on his line. This new railroad development phase saw the central of Georgia expand 3 lines. the Southern Railway System and Seaboard Airline commenced service in Columbus. Railroad lines and vehicles delivering products to and from the city were rapidly crisscrossing it. The Seaboard Airline Railway leased Columbus Railroad Company's Front Avenue freight line in 1902. The latter firm ran city streetcars and sold electricity. It had little railroad freight activity. The factories, cotton warehouses, and other commercial activities along Front Avenue wanted Seaboard to buy those rails to compete with Columbus's main carrier, the Central of Georgia Railroad. Seaboard's depot was erected in 1902 in the 1000 block of Front Avenue. The two-story brick station, 48 by 65 feet, atop a slope sloping westward, had the upper floor at street level on the eastern side. Its most notable feature was a sequence of arches on its southern and eastern upper level and southern and western basement sides. Trestle-supported tracks bordered the top story's west side. Buildings had various wooden components. The roof had wooden trusses, and all the archway doorways and top-end western wall were wood. An elevated wooden platform on the second story carried items from and to the train wagons. The structure was a freight terminal until 1971. From its main yard east of 6th Avenue, Seaboard Airlines served Front and Bay Avenues. By 1900, the South had almost finished its rail network, which had improved service, scheduling, and economics. Local control was almost entirely replaced by Northern financial influence. The 1880s and 1890s saw numerous tiny local lines go bankrupt. Thus, this was a natural continuation. November 22nd, 1915, saw one of our community's most notable train crashes. The Convention T. Kennedy Circus ended its 1915 season 4 days before Thanksgiving. After setting attendance and revenue records at the Atlanta Exposition downtown, they headed to Girard, Alabama, over a recently opened bridge from Columbus. The train and its artists were 6 miles from town, and the tracks might be clear. The Central of Georgia passenger train from Columbus to Macon was intended to pause at Muskogee Junction. Only commands were disregarded. The Central of Georgia train veered onto the main rails and hit the Circus train head-on at Bull Creek. At 1:26 p.m., 9 minutes before the normal train left, they collided at 30 to 35 miles per hour. The metal and wood circus train was filled with greasy tents that fueled furnace-hot flames. 24 circus performers perished. An overcrowded city hospital has almost 50 survivors. When the engines merged, they stayed on course. No one died on the Central of Georgia train, which had stronger cars. Not aboard the circus train. The flames spared the back cars with wild animals. Between, 9 automobiles were devoured in just 2 hours. Young hunters fled town after hearing an enraged circus bear was free, but its fate was never recorded. A group of monkeys stayed still when colorful birds flew away. The terrified and panicked jumped into trees along the train bed. Circus workers fired the monkeys out of the trees to hinder rescue operations. The Girard performance was cancelled, leaving circus performers without lodging or food. Columbus residents rallied behind them, and women's club members cooked them Thanksgiving dinner on the first floor of the Murrah Building on 1st Avenue. Dr. Luther R. Christie, pastor of First Baptist Church from 1909 to 1917, led a funeral cortege down 12th Street on Thanksgiving morning and presided over a City First ceremony. Behind him were Professor Eslick's band members playing borrowed instruments. They played a mournful Rock of Ages as they crept to the church. Christie lectured on God's omnipotence and his refuge in the darkest hours to a packed house. The Con T. Kennedy Show traveled to Albany, Georgia and Jacksonville, Florida to end their season the day after the services. The tight-knit circus community contributed equipment and performances for the remaining days. Riverdale Cemetery subsequently constructed a circus tent headstone to honor the disaster. On January 1st, 1918, the USRA took over the country's main railroads while the nation was fighting World War I. The USRA leased all lines of any size or strategic significance, including the Central of Georgia, to improve railroad cooperation for the war effort. The nationalization experiment had mixed success, although USRA-controlled lines transported 8,714,582 soldiers before being transferred to private operations on February 29, 1920. Many more companies were founded during this time of rapid expansion after World War I. The city's railroad lines were also required to contribute to growth and profit from increased freight. Georgia's Central, Southern, and Seaboard highways upgraded. The Central of Georgia Railway erected a new coal chute, roundhouse, freight yards, underpasses, and other structures. The 1901 Richardsonian Romanesque Union Depot was also renovated. The Central of Georgia's most significant building was the 1925 13th Street Viaduct, Georgia's longest at 1,888 feet and 50 feet wide, from 5th to 10th Avenues along 13th Street. It cost approximately $500,000 to build, with the City and Southern Railroad, whose lines are impacted, contributing. The city's expansion also saw the completion of the 11th Street underpass and the 1st Avenue underpass between 16th and 17th Streets. Railroads opened up previously unconnected sections of the country. Railroads, like steamboats and stagecoaches, lost their utility as passenger transport as automobiles and truck lines and air travel advanced. Railroad freight activities also dropped. From 1920 to 1957, rail passenger volume fell from 1.27 billion to 413 million. The first Georgia streamliner, the Man-O-War, was introduced by the Central of Georgia Railway in 1947 to run 2 round trips a day between Columbus and Atlanta. The General Motors E7 locomotive towed 4 Budd-built cars, 2 coaches, a baggage coach, and a tavern observation car, with 152 revenue seats and 56 non-revenue seats. Many Columbosians recall Man-O-War rides. It transported CEOs on business trips, ladies shopping, families on vacation, and school children. The Central of Georgia separated coaches, confining African Americans to the Man-O-War luggage coach in accordance with Jim Crow regulations. Blacks couldn't even visit diner lounges. Most railroads didn't like the additional expenses these regulations imposed, but the Central of Georgia refused to desegregate even after Congress approved anti-segregation legislation, stating federal laws didn't apply to its passenger trains since they didn't cross state boundaries. Separate passenger waiting rooms were also at Columbus's Union Depot. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, Columbus passenger train traffic followed the national trend. Fewer daily runs into the city until the big passenger trains disappeared one by one. Ironically, fewer runs drove the public to rely even more on the other modes of transportation that had replaced passenger trains, worsening the railroad's financial problems. Despite opposition from the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, the Man-O-War, the city's most famous passenger train, was forced to cut daily runs to Atlanta and close its lounge car to recover losses. Southern Railway purchased the Central of Georgia in 1963, and it is now part of Norfolk Southern. Finally, economics killed the train. About 1969, it was discontinued. The Seminole, another daily passenger train from Columbus to Jacksonville, Florida, ended in July 1968. On April 31, 1971, the city of Miami, en route to Chicago, passed through Columbus, ending rail passenger service to and from the city. For 119 years, passenger trains had served the city, frequently prospering, so their death was like a sorrowful conclusion to a once happy affair, according to a newspaper. Although passenger trains no longer travel through Columbus, freight service continues. railroad lines still traverse the city. To offset private railroads' rising passenger train losses, the federal government created Amtrak as a quasi-public company in 1971. 20 of the 26 intercity passenger railroads in 1971 gave them to Amtrak. Southern Railway and others followed later in the decade. Amtrak operates over 300 trains daily over 21,400 miles of track to over 500 locations in 46 states and 3 Canadian provinces. Amtrak owns 623 miles and operates 132. Trains may reach 150 miles per hour on certain tracks. In fiscal year 2018, Amtrak had 31.7 million passengers, $3.4 billion in revenue, and over 20,000 employees.